Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you guys are having a good day. We're starting out today's episode outside of the little railway line that we set up in the previous episode, and I'm still doing a little bit of work on this. I still need to work on the tunnel and things like that, but I have a bigger tunnel in mind, a much bigger tunnel in fact, both longer and wider than the one we have made yesterday, because I need to have a solid rail line out to the snow biome at some point, and I am planning on getting that done sooner rather than later, or at least getting it started sooner rather than later, because I know it's going to be a big project. And this will ultimately be the site of a Piston Bolt, which is a high-speed means of traveling by minecart, allowing you to have kind of piston-assisted movement. Mentioned it briefly at the start of yesterday's episode, and between episodes I'm going to be looking a little bit into the technology required to set up a Piston Bolt in the first place. But the main problem right now is digging out the tunnel, because the tunnel yesterday took me an awfully long time to dig, and the tunnel out to the ice biome is potentially going to be about 3 or 4 times the size. I kind of want to have a way of doing this that's going to be a little bit more, if not automated, then at least fun, and one of the things I was thinking about doing was getting together as many end crystals as I could and blasting out the stone down there, because end crystals can be pretty powerful in terms of their explosions. But I've been doing a bit of testing in creative, and I've discovered that there is a couple of quirky things about end crystals that you would not expect from an explosive material. And end crystals are quite valuable, or at least quite difficult to make in terms of the ingredients you need to get, but right now I do have an Enderman farm and a Blaze farm, which takes care of the Eyes of Ender component. Ghasts are quite easy to farm tiers from. We don't have a ghast farm set up, but I can fly around the nether shooting them and getting looting 3 on the sword there to take care of dropping more than 1 ghast tier at a time, and the rest is just glass, which can be farmed from a desert. I think we should be okay, and the destructive potential of these things means that we could potentially blast out a large area of a mine or a tunnel or something like that. Now, the thing about end crystals that makes them a little bit different from TNT is that they do not have any kind of chain reaction property, which is going to prove a little bit of a problem here. Because even though you can destroy an end crystal by blowing up another end crystal at a distance, for example here, I'm going to blow up this end crystal over here, and it will destroy this one, but this crystal here does not explode in the process. I'm going to put a few blocks here in harm's way. Normally you'll have an obsidian underneath it, will prevent it from doing any explosion damage downwards, but anything to the side there is going to be fair game. We'll put another few blocks around here as well as an example. And watch what happens when I destroy this end crystal, which is going to produce a pretty powerful explosion. That destroys that end crystal, but as you'll see, there are no particles coming off of this end crystal, and the blocks around the outside here have not been damaged. That is not like the end crystal has been exploded, it has just been vanished. It's been destroyed without having a chain reaction the way TNT does. Note now, if I destroy this one directly, bam, all of the blocks around there get destroyed except for these ones that were below the level of the obsidian, and that's kind of what we want. So if we're blasting out a tunnel using end crystals, we want to make sure that if we are placing a bunch of them before we trigger the explosion, that they are going to be outside of the blast radius, which I've done a little bit of testing in creative, is about 11 blocks total. If you put 11 blocks between them, so this is where one of them would be, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You put an end crystal on the 12th block over here, and it will not get blown up by the adjacent end crystal. So if we're going to be using these things as our super powerful explosives, we are going to have to bear that in mind. And I don't think a TNT explosion will cause a chain reaction that will explode an end crystal, although I might try that quickly just to be sure. I'll place the end crystal here. I'm going to have to put the TNT a little bit closer because TNT doesn't have quite as large a blast radius as end crystals do, and I guess I'll put a couple of blocks out here, which probably won't be destroyed by the TNT, but would be destroyed by the explosion radius of an end crystal. Now, if we light this guy and run away real fast, let's see if that does anything. Nope, looks like it has destroyed the end crystal but left the surrounding blocks intact, and I didn't see any explosion from the end crystal either, so it looks like it's safe to say that end crystals cannot be part of a chain reaction. So before I spend too much time blowing these things up in the name of science, I am going to go and farm a whole bunch more of them, and then we'll come back to a time lapse where we're going to be using these to blow out a large portion of the tunnel out to the tundra. I don't know if we're going to get all the way there today because this does seem like a lot of work, but I think it's going to be worth it. I'll grab as much obsidian as I can for the bases of them. We'll go farm a few ghasts. I probably got some ghast tears in storage somewhere, and I definitely know where to get hold of the other ingredients for the Eyes of Ender. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll be back with a time lapse in just a second. Hey folks, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the time lapse, and down here we have the result of 164 end crystal explosions, which, let me tell you, is quite a lot of end crystals, and every ghast in my world just became public enemy number one. I'm going to be collecting ghast tears anytime I can see them, and while it may look like this tunnel stretches away into infinity, in fact, that's just my render distance, and it's really not that long. This tunnel is probably, I would estimate, about 200 or so blocks long, maybe 250, possibly 300 if we're lucky. This really did take quite some doing, and as you can see, I only placed an end crystal every couple of blocks, because what I failed to take into account is the fact that stone has a reasonable blast resistance, and it's not going to clear out an area the size of the end crystal's explosion radius every single time one of these things goes off. In fact, it's actually going to produce a fairly small crater in the stone here, and that's really going to require us to put a lot of end crystals down here. So like I said, I've spent 164 end crystals on this tunnel so far and really not got very far. We may want to rethink the strategy, or I may just want to continue blasting this out anytime I feel like I have the opportunity to. But the cool thing is we have a nice big area that we can now start to work into the design of our Piston Bolt railway, and I'm very excited to embark on this whole project. I think it's going to be a really, really fun one to do, and kind of technical, something that I've never really considered doing before in Minecraft, but Lately, I've just got the itch to do something like this. Okay, so what we're going to do is put down this shulker box here, which contains a lot of resources I have been crafting. I've got a lot of sticky pistons here. Took a little while to make those, but as you can tell, I've got an iron farm, a witch farm for redstone, a slime farm for the slime. Cobblestone and wood can come from everywhere. It's really not going to take all that long to craft up a bunch of pistons. Got a ton of repeaters that I had left over from other stuff, and we've got a few other resources here. And in this chest here is precisely everything we will need to start building a piston bolt track. It's really an expensive thing, but not all that complicated to build in terms of components. And once you start understanding the patterns involved with this, it's really going to be quite straightforward. The most important thing right now is that this is a diagonal piston bolt track. And the reason for that being that we are right now kind of roughly equidistant on the X and Z axis. We are about 5,000 blocks out, give or take, from our spawn point, 5,500-ish, and that's going to be important because that means if we take a diagonal line towards the positive coordinates on both axes, positive X, positive Z, we end up heading straight back towards spawn. And diagonal piston bolts actually travel a little bit faster than the straight piston bolts. The straight piston bolts will travel at 20 blocks per second. Diagonal ones will travel at 28 blocks per second. So it's actually a faster form of transport than a standard piston bolt, which is kind of perfect. Now, before I go ahead and build this, I should point out that I have been inspired by recent videos by DocM77, who plays on the Hermitcraft server and is a long-established member of the technical community. He has been building these piston bolt tracks on the Hermitcraft server in various different places. And since I follow him for one of my other projects, the Hermitcraft Recap, I felt like pointing out that, yeah, I do want to give him a little bit of credit here because he's the one who has kind of inspired me to take this project on and not be intimidated by it. I've also seen a lot of people mention that piston bolts are a key feature of the Psycraft server as well, so if you watch any videos by Ilmango or any of the other folks on the Psycraft server, you'll probably see a few of these as well. But the video where I got information about how to actually construct a piston bolt is by a user named Beast, and I will link that in the description of this video so you can go and take a look at it yourself. I'll also put it up in the iCards in the top right. And this is not Beast's original design. These designs existed as far back as 2012, as far as I can tell, but it's kind of cool to know that there are other people out there making these kind of technical videos, and Beast's video showcases a whole bunch of them. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Piston Bolts. Once again, you will find that in the description. So for the diagonal design, here is what we're going to do. We're going to grab this shulker box and bring it over here, and what we need to do is set up a series of curved rails, basically every diagonal block here. We're going to start by curving a rail like this and taking away the two straight rails. And it's important to know where our diagonal line is here, and that's why actually the obsidian here is actually going to work kind of in our favor. So let me keep lighting up the walls here because I really don't want mobs to spawn like that creeper that we just saw down there. And as we work our way down the corridor here, placing these rails, we want to make sure that each time the kind of point, the triangular point of the curved rail is facing in the direction we want to travel. It is also worth noting that this is only a one-way system. You'll only be able to travel this way back towards spawn on this piston bolt, so if we want to make another one that comes out to the snow biome here in the first place, we are going to have to build a completely separate piston bolt. So it's going to be a mammoth project if we want to take that on. Personally, I quite like the idea of it just being a one-way thing, although considering I have started building it over here, it's probably going to be one that takes me back to spawn rather than one that takes me out here to the ski village project. But anyway, we will figure that out another time, and I feel like building stuff like this on live streams and stuff will be a neat project to have in the foreseeable future. It's also worth noting that a lot of people build these in the nether, for obvious reasons, really. Travel through the nether means a 1:8 ratio with the blocks in the overworld, meaning that if you travel, 20 blocks on a piston bolt in the nether, then you're traveling 160 blocks in the overworld. So it's actually very, very useful to have stuff like this set up in the nether. But I'm just going to go ahead and build this in the overworld anyway, because I kind of wanted rail travel to be a thing exclusively for the overworld, for the time being at least. We might make a rail section of the nether hub at some point in future, but the nether hub is still an ongoing project as far as walking and boat paths and stuff goes, so it's probably worth saving rail travel for another time. Anyway, I don't want to go any further than that with the rails for today because I do want to go into a little bit of the redstone setup, and of course, filling the entire length of this tunnel with these curved sections of rail will take quite a while. There are automated machines that will help you curve rail because rail can actually be pushed around using pistons. So there are machines that will allow you to kind of curve all of these rails automatically. If you just place a rail on each of these diagonal blocks and then start a system going, it will go down here with flying machines and sticky pistons and push rails into place so that all of these will slowly connect one after the other and turn out looking like this. But if you want to just place them manually, of course, you absolutely can. I'm going to break down some of this dark oak, and that's what we're going to be using to push ourselves around in the piston bolt. What we want to start doing is placing blocks diagonally on each of the corners of the rails here, so you'll end up with a kind of diagonal line of dark oak wood like so, and we'll do the same on the opposite side. And these blocks are actually going to be pushed inwards and are going to push us along the track once we have some sticky pistons set up here. We are going to need to widen the tunnel out a little bit because we need to build behind each of these blocks, and in some places the end crystal just hasn't cleared out enough of the terrain, so ultimately I end up mining a whole bunch of this anyway. We need to leave a 1 block gap and then place another dark oak plank behind here like so. And of course these can be any solid blocks which can conduct redstone power. Any kind of building blocks, doesn't have to be wood in this case, but just the kind of stuff that I like building this with. We'll do the same on the opposite side as well, going all the way back down the track until we reach our starting point. And then in between each of these blocks we need to place a sticky piston facing forwards towards the tracks here, so that it's going to push this block into us when we're sat here in the minecart riding the piston bolt. So we need to work our way down the line here, placing a sticky piston in each of these spaces and making sure, for one, that we stay lit up here so that no creepers come along and blow up sections of the track, but also just making sure that the sticky pistons are in the same orientation every time, so they're not facing this way or facing upwards or something like that. They all need to be facing inwards towards the track we're going to be riding. Of course, if you're building these in the nether, it's also worth noting that all of these blocks are potentially going to be spawning spaces for zombie pigmen, so you may want to make sure that you cover all of this with carpet or something like that to ensure that no mobs are going to spawn. In fact, it might even be something that we do down here just to make sure that like stuff doesn't end up spawning on top of here, like slimes, for example. And I just realized I placed all of those pistons facing in the wrong direction, so I need to go back and redo some of those. Behind the first set of pistons on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, we are going to be placing another block further out here and a repeater facing into this block behind the piston. Place another one over there, and then these two blocks need to be connected up by a button and a length of redstone wire. So let's make a stone button here real fast. We'll place that here at the beginning of the piston bolt, and then we'll run redstone wire from that into these blocks on either side like so. And we are going to need to clear out the cave wall on a little bit on each side here because we're going to build a repeating pattern of redstone components going down behind each of these little segments here. Our first piece has a block and a repeater. We need to place some redstone dust here, and then we're going to place another block there and another repeater. We're going to place some redstone dust there. We're going to place another block and another repeater, and then we just repeat this pattern so it alternates. So if you imagine these being numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth, all of the odd numbered ones have this repeater and a block there. All of the even numbered ones have a piece of redstone dust, and then immediately adjacent to that redstone dust you place the block for the next odd numbered one that has the block and the repeater, and then redstone dust, block and a repeater, redstone dust, block and a repeater, redstone dust, and so on all the way down the line. We'll do the same on this side as well. It just needs to mirror exactly what's going on the opposite side, and you don't even need to worry about adjusting repeater timings or anything like that. The repeaters need to be left on their default timings. So that's now all set up. All of the redstone components and blocks and so forth are in the right place, and all we need to do is test it. I'm going to test it without the player in it first, so you can see the minecart shoot off down the track. All I should need to do is press this button, and that's how fast you travel. Looks like the minecart might have got stuck at the end here, so maybe there is a component out of place. Nope, it actually looks like it reached the end of the track. It just didn't have a curved section of track on this last piece here to catch the minecart. But that is pretty quick. That looks like 28 meters per second. So let's get in here and give it a test. All you need to do is place a minecart on this first rail here, get into the minecart and press the button, and whoosh! And we're off. And the only reason we got stuck at the end there, like I said, is because this section doesn't have a rail on it yet. So what is happening each time one of these pistons fires is that it's pushing the minecart from one side to another. Because the minecart is at an angle to start off with, because it's on a diagonal here, naturally pushing this piston inwards is trying to push the minecart over into this space. And then this piston pushing at exactly the same time is trying to push the minecart this way, and so it just ends up on the next section of rail over each time. the delay from the repeaters allows the redstone timing to delay enough for a brief enough interval that each of these pistons fires kind of in turn and pushes the minecart forward down each of these tracks, and it's snapping onto each new section of rail as it goes. But if you can imagine this being built about 5,000 blocks in that direction, then what we have is a super high-speed rail network that's going to take me back to Founder's Forge in a matter of maybe a couple of minutes. And while it's going to take an awful lot of work and an awful lot of resources to do that, I love the idea of traveling around using these things. It's like having a bullet train built in your Minecraft world. So I encourage you guys to try this out, even if it's just a short distance in the nether, taking you from one nether portal to another. As long as it's adequately spawn-proofed, you should have a really great time with these things. And I want to thank once again DocM, the Psycraft guys, and Beast for putting the information out there that these things exist. Now I need to do a fair amount of spawn proofing of this cave if I want to use this with any great regularity. But that is going to be it for this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the minecart rail of the future, even though the design itself is pretty old school. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode if you've enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you guys soon. Take care, bye for now.